The research vessel Endeavour hung in the darkness above Cathara Prime, like a metal seed waiting to take root. Inside the ship, Dr. Sarah Chen checked her equipment for the third time that morning. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind wandered to the planet below. This was humanity's first major xenobiology mission, and everyone knew the risks. One wrong move could end Earth's fragile place in the galactic community. Sarah looked at her reflection in the polished metal of her sample case. Brown eyes stared back at her, surrounded by laugh lines that seemed too cheerful for such a serious moment. At 34, she had spent half her life studying Earth's animals. Now she would study beings who could talk back, who had cities and laws and weapons far beyond anything humans had made. The Cathari were not happy about human presence in their territory. They resembled the big cats of Earth, but they walked on two legs, and their eyes held intelligence that made Sarah's chest tight with wonder and fear. They had ruled this sector of space for 2,000 years. Humans had barely left their own solar system a century ago. Dr. Chen were ready for surface deployment. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through her communicator. The captain was a stern woman who trusted protocols more than instincts. Sarah understood why. In space, protocols kept people alive. The landing shuttle touched down on Cathara Prime 30 minutes later. Sarah stepped out onto purple grass that felt strange under her boots. The air smelled of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Two Cathari warriors waited at a distance, their golden fur gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. They wore no armor, but their claws alone could tear through steel. That was what the briefing documents said anyway. The human team set up their camp near a forest of trees with silver bark. The Cathari watched but did not approach. This was the agreement. Humans could study the planet's ecosystem, but they must stay in designated areas. No mixing with Cathari settlements. No unsupervised contact. Sarah worked through the afternoon collecting soil samples and cataloging plant life. Everything fascinated her. This was what she had dreamed of since childhood, when she had spent hours in her backyard studying ants and beetles. Her mother used to joke that Sarah would befriend a tiger if given the chance. The diplomatic liaison, Ambassador Park, stood near the perimeter talking with the Cathari observers. Sarah could not hear the conversation, but she saw the tension in everyone's posture. Humans were predators from a death world. Most species in the galaxy evolved on gentler planets. Earth had hurricanes, earthquakes, venomous creatures, and 100 other dangers. It made humans tough. It also made other species nervous. Evening came fast on Cathara Prime. The sun set in tandem, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. Sarah was labeling her last sample when she heard a sound that made her freeze. It was a whimper, high-pitched and terrified. She turned slowly. A small Cathari cub stood at the edge of the camp. The cub was barely 3 feet tall, with fur that looked patchy and dull compared to the warriors she had seen. Big green eyes stared at Sarah with pure fear. The cub's whole body trembled. "Easy," Sarah whispered, not moving. "It's okay." The security officer nearby, Jenkins, reached for his stunner. Dr. Chen stepped back. "Protocol says—" "Wait," Sarah said softly. She knew what protocol said. Unknown species approaching camp should be treated as potential threats. But this was a child, a terrified child who had somehow wandered into the wrong place. The cub made a hissing sound and backed toward the equipment cases. It was trapped between the camp and something it feared more in the forest behind it. Sarah's heart broke a little. She had seen the same fear in her rescue work back on Earth. Stray dogs, injured foxes, even a bear cub once. Fear made creatures do desperate things. "Nobody move," Sarah said clearly. She set down her sample case and slowly lowered herself to her knees. The cub's eyes followed her every movement. Jenkins put the stunner away. "Ma'am, I can't do that. If it attacks, it won't attack. Look at it. It's scared." Sarah made herself smaller, less threatening. She had done this 1,000 times with frightened animals. Eye contact could be aggressive, so she looked slightly to the side. She kept her hands visible and open. She made a soft clicking sound with her tongue, the kind she used to calm nervous creatures. The cub's ears twitched. It took one hesitant step toward her, then another. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her breathing slow and even. The cub was close enough now that she could smell something like honey coming from its fur. Then everything went wrong. Ambassador Park shouted something from across the camp. The cub startled and lunged forward. Sarah felt sharp pain as small fangs sank into her hand. It was not a deep bite, but it broke the skin. Blood welled up around the cub's mouth. Jenkins raised his stunner. Other security personnel moved in. The cub's eyes went wide with terror, knowing it had done something terrible. Sarah made a choice in that split second. She knew what protocol demanded. She knew what logic suggested. But she also knew what her heart told her, and she had learned long ago to trust that voice. Instead of pulling away, Sarah wrapped her arms around the cub and pulled it close to her chest. The small body was warm and trembling. She could feel its rapid heartbeat against her ribs. Her hand throbbed where the fangs had pierced, but she ignored it. "It's okay," she whispered into the soft fur. "It's okay. You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you." The cub struggled for a moment, then went still. Sarah began humming, an old lullaby her mother had sung to her. She rocked slightly, the way she had rocked frightened animals hundreds of times before. Blood from her hand dripped onto the purple grass, but she did not let go. "Dr. Chen, what are you doing?" Jenkins sounded horrified. "My job," Sarah said quietly. "Now back off. All of you." The camp fell silent except for Sarah's humming. The cub's breathing gradually slowed. Its claws, which had been extended in panic, slowly retracted. Sarah felt the small body relax against her. Then she heard the sound that chilled everyone to their bones. Footsteps heavy and fast coming from the forest. A roar that shook the air. Sarah looked up to see 3 HFY warriors emerging from the trees, weapons drawn. Their faces showed rage and fear in equal measure. Behind them came more HFY, including one who wore robes marking her as someone important. Her fur was silver with age, and her eyes were the color of amber. Those eyes locked onto Sarah holding the cub. The warrior in front raised a weapon that hummed with energy. "Release the youngling human, now." Sarah's team immediately raised their own weapons. The tension exploded from nervous to deadly in a heartbeat. But Sarah did not move. She kept holding the cub, kept humming her lullaby, kept rocking gently back and forth. "Dr. Chen," Captain Morrison's voice cracked through the communicator. "What's happening down there?" "We're reading multiple armed HFY approaching your position." Sarah looked at the old HFY in robes. She saw something in those ancient eyes. Calculation. Judgment. A decision being made that would affect everything. "Tell them," the elderly HFY said in perfect English, her voice like gravel and silk, "that the human will come with us. She will face the Council of Fangs and Claws. She will answer for touching one of our young." Ambassador Park stepped forward, hands raised in peace. "Elder Vraxa, please. This is a misunderstanding. We can resolve this diplomatically." "There is no misunderstanding," Vraxa said coldly. "Your kind are predators. Your history is written in blood, and now one of you has put hands on a HFY cub. The Council will decide if this means war." Sarah finally looked down at the cub in her arms. It had fallen asleep against her chest, exhausted from fear and panic. Such a small thing. So fragile. She could feel its little heart still beating too fast. "I'll go," Sarah said. "But someone should bandage my hand first. I don't want to drip blood on the little one." Every human in the camp stared at her like she had lost her mind. The HFY warriors looked at each other with what might have been confusion. Elder Vraxa stepped closer, her eyes studying Sarah with an intensity that felt like being dissected. "You were bitten. Your subordinate wished to stun the cub, yet you protected it. Why?" Sarah met the elder's gaze steadily. "Because he was afraid. Because he's small. What other reason do I need?" The elder's tail lashed once, a movement Sarah could not interpret. "Bring her," Vraxa commanded. "The Council must see this strange human for themselves, the one who hugs what hurts her." As the HFY warriors surrounded her, Sarah gently transferred the sleeping cub to one of them. The warrior took the youngling with surprising gentleness, looking at Sarah with an expression she could not read. Ambassador Park was already talking urgently into her communicator, calling for emergency diplomatic channels. Jenkins and the security team looked ready to fight, but Sarah just stood calmly, cradling her bitten hand, and watched the stars beginning to appear in the alien sky. She thought about her mother's words from long ago. "Sarah, your big heart is going to get you in trouble someday." Well, she thought that day had finally arrived. She just hoped her heart had not started a war. The Grand Assembly building rose from the surface of Cathara Prime like a mountain, made by intelligent hands. Sarah stood in chains at the center of a circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. Above her, galleries filled with observers from across the sector watched in silence. Every eye was on her. The chains were ceremonial, Elder Vraxa had explained during the transport. They showed respect for the trial process. Sarah appreciated the gesture, even if the metal still felt heavy on her wrists. Her bandaged hand throbbed with a dull ache, but the medical officer had assured her the bite was clean, no infection, just pain and a scar she would carry forever. 3 days had passed since the incident. 3 days of waiting in comfortable quarters while human and Cathari diplomats worked frantically behind closed doors. Ambassador Park visited twice, looking more exhausted each time, telling Sarah that Earth's future might depend on what happened in this room. No pressure, Sarah thought darkly. The council sat in a raised semicircle before her. Elder Vraxa occupied the center seat. To her left sat Commander Sharvik of the Vryn, a reptilian species whose scales shimmered green and gold. The Vryn were warriors, proud and aggressive. They had fought 3 wars with humanity before the current peace. Sharvik's eyes held no warmth. To Vraxa's right was Speaker Xynthia of the Shorvac, representing the insectoid hive colonies. Her compound eyes reflected light in strange patterns. The Shorvac operated as one mind across billions of bodies. They found human individualism disturbing and inefficient. Behind them sat representatives from a dozen other species. Sarah recognized some from her briefings. The crystalline Lurathi, the aquatic Marathi, the energy-based Quelix. All of them watched her with expressions she could not read. Elder Vraxa struck a chiming rod against a metal plate. The sound echoed through the chamber like a bell. The council will hear evidence regarding the human designated Dr. Sarah Chen. She stands accused of aggressive contact with a Cathari youngling, violation of territorial agreements and actions that may constitute grounds for expulsion of her species from this sector. Commander Sharvik rose with fluid grace. His voice came out as a series of hisses translated by a device on his collar. The Vryn delegation wishes to speak first. We have reviewed the footage from both human and Cathari recording devices. What we see confirms our long-held position. Humans are dangerous. A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. Sarah watched herself from multiple angles as she knelt before the cub. She saw the bite, saw herself pull the frightened creature into an embrace, heard her own humming. Observe, Sharvik continued. The human knows their security officer wishes to neutralize the threat. She countermands proper protocol. She allows herself to be injured. Then instead of proper defensive action, she makes physical contact with the hostile entity. He was scared, Sarah said quietly. Vraxa's tail lashed. You will speak only when the council grants permission, human. Sarah closed her mouth and nodded. Her father had taught her when to argue and when to listen. This was a listening moment. Sharvik replayed the moment of the bite several times. Sarah watched blood appear on her hand again and again. Humans evolved as apex predators on a planet they call Earth. We have studied their history. 17 major wars in the last century alone. They hunted their own megafauna to extinction. They developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight. They are violence incarnate. A murmur ran through the gallery. Sarah felt her face grow hot. Everything Sharvik said was true. Humanity's history was not pretty. She could not deny it. Speaker Xynthia rose next, her chitinous body clicking with each movement. The Shorvac Collective agrees with the Vryn assessment. However, we also note an anomaly in the human's behavior. Our analysis indicates she did not act from aggression. Her body language shows no threat display. Her actions were protective. Protective of a creature that bit her? Sharvik's laugh sounded like scraping metal. This is madness, perhaps, Xynthia said. But it is interesting madness. The collective requests the human be allowed to explain her actions. Elder Vraxa studied Sarah for a long moment. Very well, Dr. Sarah Chen, you may speak. Tell this council why you acted as you did. Sarah took a deep breath. She had practiced speeches in her head for 3 days, prepared arguments about cultural differences and misunderstandings. But standing here with all these eyes upon her, the prepared words seemed hollow. I won't defend humanity's history, she said clearly. Everything Commander Sharvik said is true. We've done terrible things. We've fought wars. We've destroyed species and ecosystems. We've hurt each other and everything around us. Sharvik's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Around the chamber, representatives nodded, but, Sarah continued, that's not the whole story. Yes, we evolved as hunters. Yes, we're good at violence. But we're also really good at something else. Something I don't think most species in this room understand. And what is that? Vraxa asked. We adopt things. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. On Earth, humans have domesticated hundreds of species. Not just prey animals. Predators, too. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became house pets. We've raised orphaned bears, lions, eagles. We've befriended dolphins and elephants. We even keep snakes and spiders as companions. This proves you dominate other species, Sharvek said. No. Sarah shook her head. It proves we bond with other species. We make them part of our family, our pack. And once something is part of our pack, we protect it. Even if it's dangerous. Even if it hurts us. She held up her bandaged hand. That cub bit me because he was terrified. I saw it in his eyes. The same fear I've seen in hundreds of scared animals. He wasn't being aggressive. He was being desperate. And when something that's small and scared lashes out, you don't hit back. You show it that it's safe. The youngling is not your family, Vraxa said softly. It is not even your species. That doesn't matter to humans, Sarah said. We've always protected young things. All young things. It's just how we're built. Maybe it's because our own young are helpless for so long. Maybe it's because we hunted in groups and learned that protecting the weak made the whole pack stronger. I don't know the evolutionary reason. I just know what I felt in that moment. And what did you feel? Cynthia asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. That he needed help, Sarah said simply. That he was small and scared and alone. What else matters? Silence filled the chamber. Sarah watched the council members look at each other. She had no idea if her words helped or hurt her case. Elder Vraxa finally spoke. The youngling's name is Renth. He was of low status in our society. Weak, sickly. Many believed he would not survive to adulthood. His mother abandoned him 3 months ago. He has been living on scraps at the edge of our settlement. Sarah felt anger flare in her chest. She bit it back, remembering where she was. Your confusion is noted, human, Vraxa said dryly. Among Cathari, the strong survive. The weak fall behind. This is the natural order. Most species in this galaxy follow similar principles. That's horrible, Sarah said before she could stop herself. That is survival, Sharvek said. Resources are limited. The strong must be preserved. The weak consume resources without providing value. The weak are still people, Sarah shot back. They still matter. They still feel pain and fear, and enough, Vraxa said. But her eyes held something that might have been curiosity. You claim humans are different. That you protect the weak even though you are predators. Our analysts have reviewed your species records. What they found is disturbing. Another holographic display activated. Sarah saw images from Earth's history. A human child holding an injured bird. A family adopting a 3-legged dog. A woman raising an orphaned gorilla. A man saving a bear from a trap. On and on, hundreds of examples. You are the only known species, Cynthia said slowly, to deliberately adopt predators. To take in creatures that could harm you. To expend resources on beings that provide no benefit. They provide love, Sarah said. Companionship. That's benefit enough. You keep creatures in your dwelling places, Sharvek said with disgust. You share your food with them. You mourn when they die. It is irrational. It's human, Sarah said firmly. And maybe that's what you don't understand about us. Yes, we can be violent. Yes, we can be dangerous. But we're also capable of incredible compassion. We choose to care for things that can't help us back. We choose to protect things that hurt us. We choose to love across species boundaries. This human speaks truth, a new voice said. Sarah turned to see a Lorathi representative rising. Its crystalline body refracting light into rainbows. My species has studied Earth's internet transmissions. Millions of humans share images of their adopted creatures. They celebrate these bonds. It is a cultural phenomenon we do not see in other predator species. Because it is weakness, Sharvek insisted. When the Devourers come, the Devourers are a myth, someone called from the gallery. Enough, Vraxa said sharply. She looked at Sarah with eyes that seemed to see through her. Dr. Chen, if we allow your species to remain in this sector, what guarantee can you offer that humans will not become a threat? Sarah thought carefully before answering. I can't guarantee that. Humans are individuals. We make our own choices. Some of us are violent. Some of us are cruel. But most of us, when given the choice between hurting and 6 months had passed since the trial. Sarah stood on the observation deck of Waystation Gamma, watching ships arrive from across the sector. Each vessel carried refugees fleeing from something the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years. The Devourers had arrived and they were hungry. Beside her, Renth pressed his face against the transparent aluminum, counting ships with quiet fascination. He had grown in the past months. His fur gleamed now with proper nutrition and care. His eyes held less fear and more curiosity. He still followed Sarah everywhere, much to the amusement of the other species on the station. "That's a Marathi transport," Renth said, pointing with one claw. "See the blue lights? They need those to keep their water tanks pressurized." "Good eye," Sarah said, ruffling the fur between his ears. He leaned into her touch. Some of the Kithari on the station found this behavior strange. Cubs did not bond so closely with adults outside their immediate family. But Sarah had learned that Renth had never really had a family. Until now, she had 4 other students now, too. A young Vryn named Kasich, who was considered too small for warrior training. 2 Shorvac drones who had developed individual personalities, which the collective found disturbing. And a Larathi child named Prism, whose crystalline structure grew in unusual patterns. All of them were outcasts. All of them had found their way to Sarah, the human cultural liaison who worked with broken things, some species called her. Others used less polite terms. Sarah's communicator chirped. Ambassador Park's face appeared on the small screen. The ambassador looked like she had not slept in days. "Sarah, have you been watching the news feeds?" "Some of them," Sarah admitted. "It's bad, isn't it?" "Bad doesn't cover it. We've lost 17 colonies in the past month. The Galactic Fleet can't stop them. These devourers, whatever they are, they just consume everything. The entire biosphere's gone in days." Renth's ears flattened against his skull. Sarah put a hand on his shoulder, feeling him tremble. "How long until they reach this sector?" Sarah asked quietly. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Park rubbed her eyes. "The council is ordering full evacuation of all non-essential personnel. That includes you and your students. What about the refugees?" "They'll evacuate too, as fast as we can manage." "But Sarah, there are over 200,000 beings on that station. It's going to take time." Sarah looked at the ship still arriving. More and more every hour. Families clutching their belongings. Children crying. The elderly moving slowly, confused by the chaos. "We'll help with the evacuation process. My students and we can coordinate different species' needs. That's not necessary. The station staff can handle." "Ambassador, have you ever tried to evacuate a Marathi family that needs water every 4 hours alongside Quelix, who are pure energy? Or separate Vryn from Shorvac when both species are terrified?" Sarah shook her head. "My students know these species. They can help." Park was quiet for a moment. "All right. But Sarah, when I give the word, you get on a transport. No arguments. Earth needs you alive." After the call ended, Sarah gathered her students. They met in the small classroom she had set up near the residential sections. Kasich arrived first, his green scales darker than usual with stress. Prism floated in next, her crystalline body pulsing with nervous light. The 2 Shorvac drones, whom Sarah had named Hope and Curiosity, clicked in together. Renth stood close to Sarah's side. "You've all heard about the Devourers," Sarah said gently. "The council is evacuating the station. That means you'll all be going to safe worlds. What about you?" Renth asked immediately. "I'll evacuate too, don't worry. But first, we're going to help get everyone to safety. I need each of you to work with the species you know best. Kasich, you take the Vryn families. Prism, you handle the energy beings. Hope and Curiosity, you work with other Shorvac. Renth, you're with me for the Cathari and mixed groups." "This is not warriors' work," Kasich said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Sarah agreed. "It's harder than warriors' work. Warriors fight enemies. We're going to fight fear, and fear is harder to defeat than any physical opponent." They worked around the clock for the next 10 days. Sarah barely slept, surviving on stimulants and determination. She watched her students grow in ways that made her chest tight with pride. Kasich, the 2 small Vryn, carried elderly beings twice his size to the transport ships. Prism used her light patterns to calm panicked children. Hope and Curiosity created efficient organization systems that even the collective praised. Renth never left Sarah's side. When a Cathari family refused to leave without their elder who was too sick to travel, Renth spoke to them in his own language. Sarah did not understand the words, but she understood the passion in his voice. The family stayed together and they made it onto a ship. Then everything went wrong. Sarah was in the main evacuation center when the alarm sounded. Red lights flooded the corridors. An automated voice announced in 12 languages, "Devourer fleet detected. Estimated arrival 4 hours, repeat, Devourer fleet detected." The evacuation center exploded into chaos. Species that had been waiting patiently now surged toward the transport base. Security struggled to maintain order. Children were separated from parents in the crush. The elderly fell and were trampled. Everyone stay calm, Sarah shouted, but her voice was lost in the noise. Then she heard a sound that turned her blood cold. The station's defensive weapons firing. The Galactic fleet was engaging the Devourers. 4 hours had become now. Sarah's communicator lit up with messages. Captain Hayes of the human defense ship Determination was broadcasting on all channels. This is Captain Hayes to Waystation Gamma. The Galactic fleet is retreating. Repeat, the main fleet is falling back. Human vessels will hold position to cover the evacuation. Captain, you only have 3 ships, someone responded. Sarah recognized Commander Tharvex of the Cathari fleet. Against a Devourer swarm, that is suicide. Probably, Hayes said calmly. But we're not leaving until every civilian is clear. Hayes out. Sarah felt something fierce and proud surge in her chest. 3 human ships. That was all Earth had in this sector. And they were staying. Around her, other species listened to the broadcast in shock. The humans are staying? A Marathi whispered. Why would they do that? Because that's what humans do, Rent said loudly. His voice carried across the evacuation center. They protect people, even people who aren't human. Sarah grabbed her communicator. All students report to me immediately. We're reorganizing the evacuation. But the evacuation was not going well. Ship after ship departed, but thousands still remained. The station shuddered as the Devourers reached the defensive perimeter. Sarah watched through the viewports as human ships darted between the massive Devourer vessels, drawing fire away from the transport ships. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Park's face appeared on her communicator. Get to Transport Bay 7 now, that's an order. Not yet. There are still... That's not a request, Sarah. Your section is being cut off. The Devourers have breached the outer hull. Seal the blast doors and get out. Sarah looked at her students. At the hundreds of beings still in her section. Families huddled together. Children crying. The wounded lying on stretchers. How many people in my section? She asked quietly. 4,200. Sarah, you can't save them all. Save yourself. Save your students. Could we seal the doors? Buy time for them to reach another bay? Yes, but someone would have to stay to guide them. And that someone would be trapped when the Devourers break through. Sarah looked at Renth. At Kasich and Prism and Hope and Curiosity. They looked back at her with trust in their eyes. Get my students out, Sarah said. I'll stay and guide the others. Sarah, no, Ambassador, someone has to do this. It might as well be the human. We're good at last stands, remember? Renth grabbed her arm. I'm staying with you. No, you're not, Sarah said firmly. Renth, listen to me. You need to survive. You need to show the galaxy that weak doesn't mean worthless. That's your job now. But you're my family, Renth's voice broke. Sarah pulled him into a hug, ignoring the pain in her old scar. And you're mine, which is why you need to live. Make me proud, little one. She physically pushed her students toward the transport bay. Kasich started to argue, but Prism's light pulsed in a pattern that meant understanding. They dragged Kasich into protesting Renth away. Hope and Curiosity looked back at Sarah with their compound eyes, then followed. Sarah turned to the thousands of beings still in her section. They looked at her with fear and hope. All right, she said loudly. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to move quickly and calmly to Bay 14. Stay together. Help each other. If someone falls, pick them up. We're all getting out of this. A Lorathi spoke up. But the Devourers will be here before we reach the bay. Then we'll be very fast, Sarah said. Come on, move. They moved. Sarah ran from group to group, organizing, encouraging, carrying small children of species she had never seen before. The station shook with impacts. The lights flickered. Behind them, Sarah heard the terrible sound of metal tearing. She found a group of 12 children separated from their families in the chaos. Different species, some barely old enough to wall. The evacuation ship traveled for 3 days before reaching the designated safe zone on the far edge of the sector. Sarah spent most of that time helping coordinate the care of thousands of refugees crammed into spaces meant for hundreds. She changed bandages, distributed food, comforted the crying, and held memorial services for those lost. Her students worked beside her. Renth had become her shadow, translating between species when her communicator failed. Kasich used his Vrin strength to move supplies through crowded corridors. Prism's light provided comfort in the darkness when the ship's power cycled down to save energy. Hope and Curiosity organized supply distribution with mathematical precision. On the 3rd day, Sarah was called to the communication room. Ambassador Park was there, looking older than Sarah had ever seen her. The ambassador's hands shook as she poured herself a drink from a flask she kept hidden. "We won at Waystation Gamma," Park said without greeting. "Barely. 87% evacuation success. The fleet destroyed the Devourer swarm." "Captain Hayes?" Sarah asked, though she already knew. "Gone. Both other human ships, too. 2,400 human personnel lost." Park took a long drink, but they saved over 180,000 civilians. Sarah closed her eyes. 2,400 humans. That was nearly 60% of Earth's military presence in this sector. "Have their families been notified?" "Earth knows. There's already talk of pulling back our remaining forces. Some in Parliament are saying we overextended, that we can't afford to lose people protecting aliens." "Those aliens are people," Sarah said sharply. "I know that." "You know that?" "But Sarah, humanity is scared. We're new to the galactic stage. We have a tiny military compared to other species. Losing thousands of people in one battle." Park shook her head. "There's talk of recall. Bringing all humans back to Earth's solar system. Let the older species handle their own problems." "The older species ran," Sarah said. "They retreated. Only humans stayed. Which is why you're suddenly very famous." Park activated a holographic display. "This has been playing on every news network in the galaxy." Sarah watched footage from the battle. She saw the human ships diving between Devourer vessels, saw Captain Hayes' ship exploding in a bloom of light. But then the footage shifted. It showed Sarah in the corridor, spreading her arms to protect the children behind her. The image was grainy and shaking, but clear enough. Sarah facing down a Devourer with nothing but a piece of scrap metal. The caption read, "Human refuses to abandon children of any species." "The video has been viewed 3 billion times," Park said quietly. "Every species in the galaxy has seen it. They're calling you the mother of the lost. Some are calling all humans the species that stayed." Sarah felt uncomfortable under the weight of so many eyes. "I was just doing what needed doing." That's what Captain Hayes said too in his last log. Park pulled up another file. "Listen." Hayes' voice played through the speakers. He sounded calm, almost cheerful. "Final log entry, Captain Marcus Hayes, UES determination. We're about to do something really stupid. But someone has to buy time for those transports. Someone has to show these Devourers that this sector isn't free for the taking. And if humans are good at anything, we're good at stupid heroic gestures. My crew agrees. We're going in. For Earth, for the people we're protecting, for the idea that someone has to stand. Hayes out." Sarah's throat tightened. She had never been military. She studied animals, not tactics. But she understood what Hayes had done. He saw beings who needed help and he helped them. "Simple as that. The council wants to see you," Park said. "Elder Varaxa specifically requested your presence. They're calling an emergency session." 2 hours later, Sarah stood once again before the Galactic Council. This time she wore no chains. This time the gallery was even more packed than before. Representatives from hundreds of worlds wanted to witness this session. Elder Varaxa looked different now. Older maybe, or perhaps just more tired. The silver in her fur seemed brighter. "Dr. Sarah Chen, we gathered today to discuss what happened at Waystation Gamma. The Council must determine the galaxy's response to the Devourer threat." Commander Sharvek stood. The Vryn leader's scales had lost some of their shine. "My fleet retreated. This is truth, and I will not hide from it. We calculated the odds. We determined that defending the station would result in total fleet destruction, with minimal chance of success. Logic dictated retreat." "The humans did not retreat," someone called from the gallery. "The humans were illogical," Sharvek said. 3 ships against a swarm. "It was suicide." "It was brave," Vraxa said softly. "It was also effective. The humans bought time. Time we used to remember ourselves. Time we used to return." Speaker Zinthia rose, her chitinous body clicking. "The Shorvac Collective must acknowledge error. We calculated that protecting non-essential individuals was inefficient use of resources. The humans demonstrated that this calculation was flawed. They protected everyone, regardless of efficiency, and in doing so they inspired others to fight." "Inspired?" Sharvek laughed bitterly. "They shamed us. Every species in this chamber turned and ran. Only the humans stayed. Only the species with the smallest fleet and the weakest position refused to abandon civilians. Why?" A new voice spoke, a Lurathi representative that Sarah had not seen before. "Why did your species stay, Dr. Chen?" "You had no strategic obligation. No treaty requirement. You could have retreated with honor. Sarah thought about Captain Hayes, about the 2,400 humans who died buying time, about her students who had worked until they collapsed, about every human she knew who, when faced with someone who needed help, could not bring themselves to walk away. Because we couldn't leave, she said simply. That's not how humans work. When someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if they're your species or not. It doesn't matter if the odds are bad. It doesn't even matter if they would do the same for you. You just help. But why? The Lurathi pressed. What benefit does your species gain? Benefit? Sarah shook her head. We don't do it for benefit. We do it because it's right. Because leaving people behind hurts something inside us. Because we're pack animals, and once we decide someone is part of our pack, we protect them. And who is part of this pack? Vraxa asked. Sarah spread her hands. Everyone. Anyone who needs help, anyone who's scared or small or weak or lost. That's our pack. That's always been our pack. Silence filled the chamber. Sarah saw species looking at each other, having conversations with their eyes that she could not interpret. Finally, a Marathi representative spoke. His voice translated through bubbling water. My family was on Waystation Gamma. My children were in the section Dr. Chen protected. She had no reason to stay. She could have saved herself. But she stayed. She fought a devourer with scrap metal to protect 12 younglings, none of them human. My children lived because a human refused to leave them behind. More voices joined. A Vryn whose elderly parent was carried by Kasich. A Shorvac whose drones were organized by hope and curiosity. A Kethari whose child was comforted by Renth. On and on, beings stood and spoke about humans who stayed. Who helped. Who died protecting people they had never met. Elder Vraxa struck her chime, calling for silence. This council acknowledges the debt owed to humanity. Captain Marcus Hayes and 2,400 human personnel gave their lives protecting our civilians. This will be remembered. Remembering is insufficient, Sharvek said, and Sarah was surprised by the passion in his voice. The Vryn fled. We calculated. We chose survival over honor. The humans taught us that this was wrong. Commander Hayes was more warrior than I. His crew showed more courage than my fleet. The Vryn leader did something Sarah had never seen. He bowed his head to her. The Vryn swear this, never again will we retreat while humans stand. If your species protects ours, we will stand beside you. This is our shame and our pledge. Other species began speaking, making similar declarations. The Marathi, the Lurathi, even the Shorvac collective acknowledged that humans had shown them a better way. But Sarah barely heard them. She was thinking about Captain Hayes, who would never know how his sacrifice changed the galaxy, about the 2,400 humans who died strangers, but were now being honored as heroes. The Council proposes a new doctrine, Vraxa said. No species will be left behind. No civilians abandoned. No children forgotten. We will call it the Human Protocol. When evacuation is required, we protect everyone. The weak, the slow, the young, all of them. This is inefficient, Xynthia said, but her voice held something that might have been hope. The collective calculates significant resource expenditure. Perhaps efficiency is not the highest value, Vraxa said. Perhaps the humans are teaching us something we forgot long ago. That protecting each other, even at cost to ourselves, is what makes us worth protecting. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a few species abstained. The Human Protocol became galactic law. After the session, Sarah walked through the refugee ship with Renth beside her. They passed families eating together, children playing games that mixed species and rules, elderly beings from different worlds helping each other with medical needs. Is it always like this with humans? Renth asked. The protecting and helping and refusing to leave people behind? Sarah thought about Earth's history. The wars, the cruelty, the times humans had failed each other. No, she said honestly. We're not perfect. 6 years had passed since Waystation Gamma. Sarah stood on the observation platform of Unity Station, watching the sunset paint the horizon of New Cathari in shades of purple and gold. The planet had been barren when the colony started. Now 6 years of terraforming had created grasslands and forests. Different species lived here together, building something new. Behind her, voices mixed in a dozen languages. Young beings from across the galaxy attended the academy she had built. Not a military academy, not a trade school. Something different. A place where young beings learned to see each other as family, where they learned that protecting the weak was strength, not weakness. Ambassador Chen, the delegation from Vryn Prime is here, a voice said. Sarah turned to see Renth approaching. He was grown now, nearly as tall as she was. His fur gleamed in the setting light. He wore the formal robes of a cultural liaison, decorated with symbols from 20 different species. But around his neck was a simple cord with a small ceramic piece Sarah had made for him years ago. He never took it off. Thanks, Renth. How many students are we getting from Vryn this year? 47. Commander Sharvik's youngest son is among them. Renth's whiskers twitched in amusement. The commander specifically requested that his son learn under you. He said, and I quote, "If my child must be soft, let him be soft in the human way, which is somehow also strong." Sarah laughed. 6 years ago, Sharvik had called human compassion a weakness. Now he sent his son to learn it. The galaxy had changed in unexpected ways. The Devourer War still raged. The swarms kept coming, wave after wave. But the galaxy fought differently now. The human protocol was not just law. It was becoming culture. Species that once abandoned their weak now protected them. Fleets that once retreated now stood their ground when civilians needed time. And humans, those strange predators from the death world called Earth, had become the teachers of compassion. Sarah walked through the academy grounds toward the amphitheater where the delegation waited. Students nodded respectfully as she passed. A young Marathi who could barely walk on land. A Vryn with a twisted spine who would never be a warrior. A Shorvac drone who had developed individual thoughts. A Larathi whose crystals grew in patterns the collective called wrong. All of them were what their species once labeled as weak. All of them were thriving here. Kasich ran past, now a teacher himself. The Vryn who had been called too small now trained students in physical coordination. He carried a Cathari cub on his shoulders, making the child laugh with mock roars. Behind him followed a mixed group of students from 6 species, all working on some project together. "Kasich, don't let them blow up another laboratory," Sarah called. It was one small explosion. Kasich called back. "And we learned valuable lessons about chemical reactions." Prism floated by, her crystalline body now marked with decorative patterns that other Larathi had begun copying. She pulsed a greeting in patterns of light. Hope and curiosity walked beside her, still together after all these years. The Shorvac collective had declared them aberrations. But aberrations, it turned out, could teach the collective new ways of thinking. Sarah's students had become teachers, and their students would teach others. The ripples from one frightened cub biting a human hand 6 years ago were still spreading outward. The amphitheater was filled with delegates from across the sector. Sarah recognized many faces. Elder Vraxa sat in the front row, older now but still sharp-eyed. Speaker Zinthia represented the Shorvac collective, which had begun experimenting with allowing more individual development in their drones. Even Commander Sharvik was present, his scales marked with scars from battles against the Devourers. But the seat of honor was occupied by a holographic display. On it appeared the faces of families, hundreds of them, beings from dozens of species. Sarah recognized some from Waystation Gamma. Others were new. "These are the families saved by the human protocol," Vraxa explained, as Sarah took her place at the speaker's platform. "Every being you see exists because someone chose to stay. Because someone chose to protect rather than calculate. Because someone learned what humans have always known." A young Kethari spoke from the hologram, his voice clear. "My name is Taryn. 6 years ago I was one of 12 children Dr. Chen protected from a devourer. I was 4 years old. I remember being terrified. I remember seeing her spread her arms in front of us. I remember thinking this human would die to save us. Children she did not know. Children who were not even her species," other voices joined. The Marathi whose children Sarah had protected. A Vryn whose parent was carried to safety. A Shorvac whose drones were organized during the chaos. On and on, hundreds of beings speaking about humans who stayed, who helped, who died protecting strangers. "We gather today," Vraxa said, "to honor those who taught us a better way. 2,400 humans died at Waystation Gamma. In the 6 years since, millions more beings lived because of their sacrifice, because their example changed how the galaxy thinks about strength and weakness." Sharvik stood, his movement stiff with old injuries. "I retreated that day. I calculated that defending the station was impossible. I was wrong, not because my calculations were incorrect. They were accurate. It was impossible. But humans did it anyway. They achieved the impossible through the simple refusal to accept that some beings are not worth saving. The Vryn commander looked directly at Sarah. You called that cub part of your pack. You said anyone who needs help is part of the human pack. I did not understand. I thought it was sentiment, weakness. I was wrong. It is the greatest strength I have ever witnessed. Cynthia spoke next, her translated voice gentle. The collective has spent 6 years analyzing human behavior. We sought to understand the logic behind your illogical compassion. We found no logic, but we found something else. We found that caring for individuals, even at cost to efficiency, creates stronger collectives. Your weakness makes you strong. Your inefficiency creates better outcomes. It is paradox. It is beautiful. Sarah felt tears building behind her eyes. She thought about Captain Hayes, who would never know how his sacrifice inspired billions. About the 2,400 humans who died buying time. About every human who, when faced with the choice between survival and sacrifice, chose sacrifice. I'm not here to accept honor, Sarah said quietly. I'm here to say that humans aren't special. We're not better than other species. We're just different. We pack bond, we adopt, we protect. It's how we're built. But any species can learn these things. She gestured to the students visible through the amphitheater windows. Look at them. Cathari teaching Vryn, Shorvac working with Lorathi, Morathi protecting those who cannot swim. Every species here is learning to see others as family. Learning that protecting the weak is not weakness. That's what Captain Hayes died for. Not for humanity, for the idea that everyone matters. Everyone deserves protection. Everyone is worth saving. A young voice spoke from the crowd. Sarah looked down to see a small Vryn child barely old enough to speak clearly. Are humans afraid? The child asked. All the time, Sarah said honestly. We're terrified of a lot of things. But you protect people anyway, even when scared. Especially when scared, Sarah said. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. The child thought about this. I am small. Others say I am weak. But maybe I can be like humans? Afraid but still protecting? Sarah smiled. You already are. Asking questions when you're nervous? That's brave. Standing up when others say you're weak? That's brave. You're braver than you know. The gathering ended with a ceremony. Each species present pledged to uphold the human protocol, to protect civilians, to never abandon the young or weak, to see all beings as part of one large pack. As beings dispersed, Sarah walked to the memorial wall. It stretched for 100 meters carved with names. 2,400 humans who died at Waystation Gamma, but also names added since. Beings from every species who gave their lives protecting others. The wall grew longer each year, but so did the list of beings saved. Captain Marcus Hayes, Commander Thera Chen, Lieutenant Bo Jensen. On and on. Sarah touched her sister's name gently. Thara had been on the Endeavor when it made its final run. Her sister's last message was simple. Tell Mom I love her. Tell her I protected the kids. She would be proud of you, Vraxa said, appearing beside Sarah. The elder moved silently for someone so old. Your sister. Your mother. All of them. I hope so, Sarah said. Sometimes I wonder if we're doing enough. The Devourers keep coming. We keep losing people. What if the human protocol isn't enough? It is more than enough, Vraxa said firmly. 6 years ago, we fought as separate species, each protecting only our own. Now we fight as one. Mixed crews. Mixed tactics. Humans teaching Cathari about pack bonds. Vryn teaching humans about warrior discipline. Shorvac teaching everyone about coordination. We are stronger together because you showed us that together is possible. I just hugged a scared cub, Sarah said. You did more than that. Vraxa looked at the memorial wall. You showed the galaxy that compassion is not weakness, that protecting others is not illogical, that caring for those who cannot help you back is not fool.